Here's this week's My Boat feature.
One of the more popular options being installed these days on cruisers and larger day boats, of course, is underwater lights. So this week on My Boat, we're going to take you through the steps of installing underwater lights on the Silverton, and we're going to be working with one of the latest models from Lumitec. On the Silverton, I planned on installing 3 of the Sea Blaze spectrums based on usable transom space. The first step was to measure and mark the tentative positions for each of the lights at least 8 inches below the waterline. Next, I measured the location's positions from reference points that could be located inside the hull to confirm clearance. These measurements from the reference bolts were quickly checked in the bilge to ensure the required holes would clear stringers and vital items mounted on the transom. Back off the boat, final measurements to laterally locate the lights were made and marked. Finally, the supplied drilling templates were taped into position. When drilling the mounting screw holes, extra care must be taken to size them correctly for the soft bronze screws. Once the correct size is identified, all of the mounting holes can be drilled as well as the pilot holes for the wiring. The last holes to be drilled are the 1/2-inch center holes for the wiring. After removing the template, a marine sealant rated for below the waterline applications is applied to the mounting holes and the wiring hole. A generous amount of sealant is applied to the back surface of the light as well. Finally, the wiring is fed in through the transom and the light is pressed into place. As the mounting screws are tightened down, sealant must squeeze out evenly around the light to ensure a watertight bond. The same process is repeated for each of the lights. Inside the bilge, first slide the rubber strain relief on the wire and apply marine sealant to the tips of the screws and the wiring hole and press the strain relief into place. Task 1 was to mount the terminal block or bus bar in a central dry location where all 3 lights could be wired into it. Next, the positive and negative wires from each light were stripped, ring terminals crimped on, and shrink tubing heated. Once everything was prepped, the negative and positive wires from each light were secured to the bus bar. Then the power supply was prepped with the ring terminals and shrink tubing as well. Once complete, the positive and negative wires were secured to the bus. Before leaving the bilge, the wiring was cleaned up and secured with zip ties. Now, we did spend a few hours with the camera off doing the tough job of running our power wires. These go down to the light to turn them on along with the ground, but also go through the boat here to the back of the electrical panel. So that's what we're going to work on now. I first marked out and cut a hole to accept a plastic electrical box to hold the required basic switch. The positive leads from the panel and the bus bar were stripped, ring terminals crimped on, and the standard light switch was secured, and all of the switch plates were installed. The ends of the positive and negative wires were stripped for ring terminals. I also had to make up a jumper wire to run from the fuse block to the spare breaker. Next, the positive wire to the switch and the jumper wire were connected to the fuse block and the correct fuse was inserted. This block for multi-fuse circuits was selected so the owner could add more LED lights in the future. The positive was connected to the breaker and eventually the negative was secured to the negative bus bar. With the wiring tidied up, the panel was back in place and we would have to wait for launch to see the results of our work. All in all, this was a pretty straightforward My Boat project. We invested a day in it to do the installation. Fortunately, this was a reasonably easy boat to work on. Now, the fruit of our labor. We're seeing the lights and how spectacular they really are.